Okay, good evening. Welcome to Kelso School District's Fall Reopening Question and Answer webinar tonight. I'm Mary Beth Tack, and I am very honored to represent Kelso School District tonight in my role as superintendent with our evening question and answer. Thank you for being here tonight. We know this is a very different start to the school year, and there are many questions we have in our whole Kelso community. Our district team of staff are deeply committed to making this different year one of excellence. Excellence happens in the details. And tonight we share with you our reopening plan and some of those important details. Our delivery mode tonight will be a panel, and I have asked some of our Kelso School District administrators and central office folks to present tonight, and I want to introduce each of those that will be presenting different components of our reopening plan. First of all, we have Kim Yor, our Director of Teaching and Learning, who will focus on our overall fall reopening plan. She will also focus on our two main options for folks starting in the fall, and then additionally the platform in which our students will engage with the curriculum and student learning. Additionally, I have Dr. Mark Conley, principal of Butler Acres Elementary, who will be focusing on the elementary student schedule. Laura Hyatt, principal of Huntington Middle School, will focus on the middle school student schedule. We have Christine McDaniel, principal of Kelso High School, who will be focusing on Kelso High student plan and any other questions around that. Lacey DeWert, associate director of Teaching and Learning. I've asked her to talk about the Kelso Virtual Academy, one of the two options for our fall reopening. I have Heather Ogden, new to our district, with our Director of Special Education, and she'll share some of those supports we have around students in that category. Dawn Iverson, Director of Student Services, will focus on technology, our plans around technology and Chromebook distribution. We have Scott Westland, Chief Financial Officer, an operations officer. He will share our meal distribution and our phase in to in-person hybrid mode. And then finally, Holly Budge is our Director of Human Resources. She will be our moderator tonight. And so the panel will present during this chance. You will be able to put in some of in the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen, any of the questions that you hope that we will answer during the presentation. But at the end, Holly will facilitate moderating, looking at those questions, and then whatever time left in this hour, we will address as many of those really important questions that we can. The rest of the questions will help support our frequently asked questions that we will post later this week on our website, kelso.wednet.edu, under the reopening COVID plan. Our intention tonight is that at the end of this hour, most of your questions will be answered. Please know that we deeply, deeply care about what we do here in Kelso. Our mission is preparing your children, our students, for living, learning, and achieving success as citizens of our changing world. And it's the center of all that we do here in Kelso. And our top priority is the health and safety of our staff and students. I believe the options that we will share tonight, the two options that we have for our students, really achieve both of those aims. I am proud of the hard work of this Kelso School District team. I think they are second to none in the state. And as we continue to provide high quality options and teaching and learning for the students and families of our district. We have a solid plan that allows for flexibility and support the decisions that are best for the families of Kelso. Here we are, we're ready, we're strong, and we're resilient here in Kelso. And we're excited to welcome our students back virtually at the fall opening, and as soon as we can with in-person hybrid. At the conclusion, again, we will answer some of your chat questions that you leave, and hope that we tonight will serve as a great opportunity and potentially for a few more of these in the coming days. With that, now I'll transfer to our transition to our PowerPoint and introduce Kim Yor, our Director of Teaching and Learning, who will share our opening plan. Kim.
Thank you, Mary Beth. The first slide, let Mary Beth, there we go. Okay, the first slide that you have before you now is the two options that we provided all of our students with and our families to choose from. Option one is you can choose to stay at your school that in your boundary area or the school that you've choiced into, and you would do continuous learning 2.0 to start the school year with. That will be all online, all remote at the beginning. And then option two is KVA. KVA is the Kelso Virtual Academy, and that will be all online. The big difference between the two is that if you choose KVA, you're all online whether we come back or not. So you would not return to your school if we can move into the hybrid model. So in option one, the continuous learning 2.0 that will be online, we're hoping that with our Department of Health metrics, if we can keep those and they continue to decrease the numbers that we have of COVID, that we would be able to meet with our task force, develop a plan to return safely for our students, and then we would move into the hybrid model. And the hybrid model would be, right now, how we have it is K2 would come back twice a week. So it would go by last names, and then 3 through 12 would return at least once a week. So depending on your last name of your student. And we would, again, follow the safety precautions and everything that goes with that if we're able to return. The next slide that you'll see is KVA, kind of the difference between the Kelso Virtual Academy and full remote, which is where we're starting, the 2.0. The difference, like I said earlier, is the biggest difference is if you're a KVA that you would not return. So if we're able to return our students to face-to-face instruction in the classroom, KVA would stay online for those students, and then 2.0 would transition into a hybrid, so you would have some face-to-face time with your students. Another difference is KVA would remain, you have one teacher for all of your classes, whereas in 2.0 you might have a math teacher, an English teacher, a PE teacher, an art and science, depending on your grade level. But even in elementary, you'd have your classroom teacher and maybe a title lap support person or a PE and music. So that's kind of another difference there. With KVA, they'll be using Edgenuity K5 and for 612 Odyssey-ware. And for 2.0, we'll start out with 2.0 if we're online with Edgenuity K5, Odyssey-ware for most of the classes 6-8, and then for most of the classes 9-12, it will be the Kelso instruction, the adopted materials that we currently have. So a little bit different with the instructional materials. And there's, the grading will be the same, similar. With KVA, there's A, B, C, D, or F, and with 2.0, there's an A, B, C, D, or incomplete right now. The 2.0 is meant to be temporary. So when we can safely return kids to school, we'll start bringing those kids back, where KVA is more of a permanent option, online option, and not face-to-face time for most of those students. Okay, the next slide will be the platforms that we're going to discuss. One of the things that we heard from parents is that we really need, and students, we really need one platform for our kids to get into for online learning. It's hard when we have multiple students, multiple kids in the household to figure out this student needs to go to Zoom, this one goes to Google Classroom, this one goes to Google Meet, this one has a Seesaw, and how do I get in and what are the passwords? So we've adopted one consistent platform, K-12, which is Google Classroom. So if your student can log into Google Classroom, that is what they'll log into every day. If they need to go into Zoom, it'll be in the Google Classroom. So as long as they can get into Google Classroom, they'll be able to get into all of their other areas. If they're going to work in Edgenuity that day, it's already in Google Classroom. So all of the other logins that they would need are right there for them, and they're in that Google Classroom platform. all the materials will be there, the lessons, or the video conferencing that they'll need will be right in that Google Classroom platform. And most of our secondary students are used to the Google Classroom, so it won't be very new for them. And for our elementary, it's, we're gonna walk parents through it during our conferences at the beginning of the year. Okay, for elementary, we talked about Edgenuity. So for 2.0 and KVA, K5, they'll be using Edgenuity. Edgenuity is similar to Odyssey-ware that they'll be using for 6.8 and in our KVA 6.12. And whereas Edgenuity is an online materials that teach the core instruction to our students in all the areas that they need. So they have language arts, and you can go to the next one, Mary Beth, so you can see the classes. They have language arts classes, math, science, social studies, health and PE, technology, music, and art that they can take. And you can see there's over 30 courses that are provided there with Edgenuity. Edgenuity is something, whether they are 2.0 or KVA, they're able to do at a time that works best for those parents. So you'll see in the elementary schedule, and Mark will talk about that, there are some set times for kids to Zoom in, but the Edgenuity piece of that could be done a little bit later in the day if needed, if that works better for your household and for your student, for the family. As well as KVA, Edgenuity can be done at any time with KVA. So you could do even a couple days lessons within one day if the student is able to work ahead and do that. Okay, I would like to introduce Dr. Mark Conley, who will talk about what an elementary will look like for our 2.0 students in the classroom.
All right, thank you, Kim. Nice to see so many of you here tonight and so many familiar faces too, so thank you for joining us. What you have in front of you on the screen now is just a mock-up of an example of what a student schedule might look like at the elementary level. Each teacher will have some variation of this basic set of ideas that are encapsulated here. And what you'll see on this example is that the columns for Monday and Thursday are identical to one another, as are the columns for Tuesday and Friday. So what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through a day in the life by looking at Monday and working our way through that day, and then we'll expand beyond that. But what we're asking parents to do in the 2.0 option is to partner with us in serving as the student's learning coach at home. So especially with our younger students, they're going to need some help getting onto Google Classroom, getting checked in there. Really, once they're on with their teacher, as Kim alluded to, it should be fairly manageable for our kids to do. Let's just go down the day in the life of Monday. So in that upper left-hand corner, you'll see the time. We're going to start our schools, usually they start at 8:45, so that gives us a few minutes beforehand to get all logged on so that the actual class time will start right at 8:50. It's kind of what teachers usually use those first few minutes to do lunch count and attendance. They're kind of using this to get set up and make sure everybody's on board. At 8:50, they will run a whole class cell lesson. A lot of classrooms call that a class meeting, and they will do things like our second step curriculum, the Harmony, Sanford Harmony cards, and it's a really nice way of building community and relationships and expanding the knowledge kids have of one another, and it kind of provides that social time that kids need to speak to their friends and to get to know one another and to get to know their teacher. That will be a routine event with the whole class for, depending on the age level of the kids, probably 15 to 30 minutes. 15 for the kinders and 30 for the older kids. So again, this is just a random, sample that won't look 100% like your child's might look, but something very similar to this is what you'll be issued. Going down from there is an Edgenuity lesson in math, and that would be followed by a little break. a small group instruction with the teacher, and then it's listed as Edgenuity with math again. What I want to tell you is that this is a student schedule. So in this particular student's case, when it's Edgenuity with math, they would have the ability within their Google Classroom to click on Edgenuity and go about working on their math assignments during those times with their parent support. Okay, and then they would come in for a small group instructional time with their teacher and resume to Edgenuity Math. During the time that children are on Edgenuity Math in this particular example, the classroom teacher would be working with small groups. So you'll be given a schedule with your child's specific schedule on there, but just understand that this schedule is a student schedule. So if I were to show you a teacher's schedule, it would, at the top, would look like whole language or whole class cell or classroom meeting lesson, and then their schedule would be like meet with group A, break, small group with group B, meet with small group C for Edgenuity Math. Then it's a lunchtime. Our lunchtimes are coordinated and aligned with when the school district food service is providing lunch services at each of the school sites. So we've purposely blocked out the times so that it would allow parents enough time and opportunity to travel to their closest pickup location, should that be something that they choose to do in their family. And then we would return to class, and you can kind of see the difference. On Monday, your children would meet with a PE teacher, and on Tuesday, they would meet with a music teacher. So they would still have those specialist times each week, and then you can see that that repeats itself on Thursday and Friday as well. So they would have 2 PE and 2 music classes over the course of a 5-day week. So most of their time would be spent with their classroom teacher, but they'll also get to know those teachers who they will have when they come back to school with us physically. And again, then to continue down that Monday list, at 1:30, you see an Edgenuity ELA, English Language Arts lesson. Again, those would be sometimes when teachers would be in small groups. So at the end of their working time with students in their small groups, parents have a time blocked out for them, or family time, to connect with the teacher every school day afternoon. And you can connect with your child's teacher to resolve connectivity issues, or questions that arose during the time on Edgenuity, or follow-up questions or concerns or ideas that you'd like to share with your teacher. All of that is blocked aside for the afternoons, pretty much across the board throughout the district. So a little bit of flex exists with that for some of our bigger schools that have to have one extra little specialist time in there to accommodate all those needs. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday kind of look like that for your child. So they're actually seeing their whole class in one setting in the morning, and then they would see their teacher for a small group. They would see their music or PE teacher for that class session. And where you see Edgenuity Math or Edgenuity ELA, it may vary for child to child. So you may have some children who are served through our LAP or title programs, or children who are served through our special education programs, who would receive their specially designed instruction during that block time as well. Wednesday is the exception to the rule kind of day, in that we have a little different structure. We can provide some breakout sessions for kids on science or social studies through Edgenuity. And it also gives the teacher the flexibility to say, wow, I didn't really feel good about how math group A went yesterday, so I'm going to follow up with that group. Or my Edgenuity assessment data shows that these 6 kids need some follow-up and support. I'm going to provide that for them during some of those blocks of time that you see on Wednesdays. And again, Wednesday afternoon would be more teacher working in schools. That's when the schools will have their professional learning community meetings and their staff meetings, that kind of thing, but they'll still be accessible to you by email and able to set up appointments with you for the other afternoons. So that's kind of what it looks like little bits and pieces of whole class time, small group time, and computer time at home on the Chromebooks that you'll be issued just before the school year starts. And then, of course, they have music or PE a couple days a week. We won't be offering library services until we're fully back in school. Our librarians will be working on technology support and some other things. So that's kind of it for the elementary school sample. I know that some of you will have questions at the end, and we're happy to answer those. But in order to get through our night, we want to hand it off to the next level, and that comes in the form of Mrs. Laura Hyatt. Laura is the principal at Huntington Middle School. She's kind of speaking on behalf of Huntington and Cowieman this evening. So please welcome Mrs. Hyatt.
Thank you, Dr. Connolly. The middle school schedule is designed for students to have regular access to all 6 of their teachers, but to do that in a way that chunks it for students so that every day they're not trying to juggle all of their classes at once. If you look with me at this schedule, you'll notice that we have a Monday and Thursday that look similar. And you can see that if you just look at the colors, that it's repetitive on Monday and Thursday, meeting with the same teachers, 1st, 3rd, and 5th period. And then Tuesday and Friday are also the same in that they meet with their 2nd, 4th, and 6th period teachers on those days. If you notice, the very first row of this student schedule says pause. And pause is our advisory type period. And really that's a chance for middle school students to shift from being at home and doing their thing on their phones or wherever they're at, and to shift into being a student and learning. So they would log on. As you can see, the schedule tells you when you would actually have your students log on, the required log on periods here. And so for pause, they would get on, and then they would work with their teacher to make sure they're organized for the day, to make sure that they know where they're at in terms of if their classwork is done, to kind of take stock, put things in their planner, all of those types of things that are important to becoming an independent student, which is what we're teaching in middle school. So that is during the pause time. That pause class and the pause teacher will be accessed through Google Classroom, just like that's the one-stop login is through Google Classroom. And then that teacher who they have will also be listed on their student schedule. Next, let's look at Monday and kind of just look through what a schedule looks like so that you can feel what a day in the life of your middle school child might be. So after pause time, they will log on for 1st period, and they will have a lesson through Zoom or Google Meet that will be linked into their Google Classroom. So they just got to get on Google Classroom, and it'll tell them where to link into. And they'll have a live teacher that's taking them through a lesson. This lesson will expand on the types of online learning that they'll be doing through our platform Odysseyware. Odysseyware is an online program that packages everything together so that your student has demo videos, they have all of their actual work, lessons, questions, and it's all in one link. So it's very easy for them to follow along. It's created to be individualized so they're not confused about what to do next. So during that 1st period, for example, from 8:30 to 9:30, they'd meet with their teacher would give them a little mini lesson. They'd have some time to actually look at their Odysseyware lessons together, to work through a couple problems together so they understand, to have time to talk to their peers so that they could help each other. And then the teacher will check back in, give little bits more of instruction. So it's just more of a collaborative opportunity each period where they're logging on to understand the content better, and then to also do a little bit of work that's guided by their teacher. After that, you'll notice there's a light blue on Monday. 1st period, 9:30 to 10, is our optional student support. So for each class period all week long, they have a 30-minute segment that follows that classroom Zoom where they can stay on if they need help. There might be chances to, at that point, where the teacher will ask a small group, hey, I'd like you to stay on a little bit longer. I've got some more information for you, or I can give you some additional help in this area that you have questions about. And then it'll just follow the same thing. It'll repeat on a Monday with 3rd period, where there's the log on Zoom for the class, and then the optional time where students can stay logged on if they want. If they don't want to stay logged on, they can just work on the things that are online for them through OdysseyWare, and they won't need to, they can do that independently. Then we go to an extended lunch again so that students have time for a little bit of a break and to access our food services at the schools if needed for their lunchtime. And then the afternoon, then starting at 1 is their 5th or 6th period class, depending on the day of the week. And they will do the same process of logging on to have a live teacher and a live lesson and time for practicing alongside their peers and teacher. Everything on this schedule in white is independent work time. So it's important to know that, you know, they have time at lunch, they have time at the end of the day, and then they will have time in those scheduled Zoom meetings to also work on their online lessons. You'll also notice, if you look at Wednesday, that there are no required log-on periods that day. That is a day for students to catch up on their online work and to log on in smaller chunks if they need help from each of their teachers. So the Wednesday schedule has half-hour options to get on with their first period teacher, their second period teacher, and on down. That way they can get some individual questions answered or additional help as they need it. And then the other piece of this is just that built into this schedule, you know, is always the understanding that reaching out to teachers either through Google Classrooms on the chat or through their emails is a great way to have some personally scheduled time built into these optional chunks on the schedule. All right, next we will go to Mrs. Christine McDaniel, the principal at Kelso High School, to talk about Kelso grading and schedule.
Good evening. I'm glad to see so many people on tonight. That's great. Hopefully we can get your questions answered. So if you take a look at starting with Kelso High School's student schedule, it's very similar to what you have just seen for the middle school. The major difference with Kelso High is that we are on a 5-period day trimester schedule. So instead of having a 6th period on Tuesdays and Fridays, you will see what is called our post-secondary and SEL lessons. During that time, students will stay on or come back on with their 4th period teacher, and we will provide lessons around their college, career, and community ready, which is part of our plan here at the high school. We want to get all of our kids in Kelso High ready to do life after high school. And then also our social emotional learning lessons, which are very important, and Mr. Conley mentioned earlier on. So at a little bit different level than elementary and middle school, we don't generally hold classroom meetings, so it will look more around student individual needs as they are going into online learning and as the situation changes throughout this time. We know that we have a lot of kids that have been impacted in various ways over the course of this closure, so we're very, very excited to get into this work with them and help them move forward. You will notice also a 0-hour period meant at the top. That is specifically for those students who are enrolled in 0-hour PE or SOL PE. So your child will know if they are enrolled in that. That is something that they self-selected. That period begins at 7:30. That's the top time period that you see there. The rest of the students, they begin their individual work time at 7:50, which is our regular start time here at Kelso High. Another major difference is that the time periods that we have are only an hour regularly when we're in person with Kelso High, and when we eventually move to the hybrid model, we will have our 70-minute periods back, which we're very much looking forward to. What I love about this schedule is that additional half-hour student support time. So if the lesson is running over or we have those students who want to stay on, they can do so. The teacher is available to them for that entire time period. And like Mrs. Hyatt mentioned, on Wednesdays, their teachers will all be available to them during that time period that is noted for their classes. So I'm very excited to move forward with this. My motto that I always say is know more, do better. And I know that we know more. And so we will definitely do better. We will continue to move forward with your students. I'm also very excited to be able to offer you an opportunity and your students an opportunity to get face-to-face with their teachers online. So just like at the middle school, your student will see their teachers every day during their scheduled class time. Our teachers are very excited about getting their lessons ready. They're working hard to make sure that they are aligning with one another so that you'll see the same type of lesson, all based on the same standards across the curriculum. So if you have an Algebra 1A teacher and your friend has a different Algebra 1A teacher, they're going to see the same standards being taught, just with the teacher's own flair, which is what education is about. So we will have, your students will have an opportunity to get to know their teacher and get to know their students. And we're very much looking forward to that time when they can come back and be together. So we want to prepare them as much as possible for that time to make that transition as seamless as possible. With regards to grading, which I think is on the next slide here, there we go. So this, during this reopening, we have decided to go to a grading option of A, B, C, D, or I. So if you take a look at the options there in front of you, last spring we went through an A through C and an I. We decided to really take a look at what was equitable for our students and those students having access to the learning, to incorporate that D. As you know, at the high school level, it's credit bearing. And so for students to gain that credit, they have to earn at least a D in their courses. And so we wanted to make that option available to our kids. Again, incompletes are an option there. Incompletes are very rare and usually will be reserved for those students who are either unable or choose not to participate and engage in the learning. The incomplete would not impact a student's GPA at the high school level negatively. It is basically a placeholder for that student to then retake the course or another like course to earn that credit prior to graduation. Everything we do is leading to the end, leading to that graduation at the end of their senior year. And so we're always focused on those credits that students need to earn, making sure that they're earning the correct credits, and providing them with many, many options, which we have here at Kelso High School to do that. Did you want me to talk about middle and elementary grading? Middle school is similar, and then elementary, as you know, is still on the 1, 2, 3, 4 option. Sorry about that. I spent all my time on KHS there.
Thank you, Kristen.
Yeah.
And so now,
excuse me, sorry about that. Boy, I'm not doing my job. Sorry about that. I'd like to introduce to you Ms. Lacey DeWert. She's going to talk to you about Kelso Virtual Academy.
Okay, so this has been mentioned, I can't tell you how many times as we've worked through this, but this isn't something new in our district. We've just expanded the grade levels in which we serve. The thing to know about Kelso Virtual Academy, or KVA as we call it in short, is that it is an alternative learning experience school, and that stands for an ALE shortening that you'll often hear us use. So ALE is going to look very similar to what you have in 2.0. The platforms of Edgenuity and OdysseyWare will still be used. If you have a elementary kid, it doesn't matter if they stay with 2.0 or KV8, they're still using Edgenuity. If you have a 6-8 student, they would still be using OdysseyWare. Deviation happens at the secondary 9-12 level. So with Kelso Virtual Academy, we will use OdysseyWare for our content delivery, whereas Kelso High School will go ahead and build and create and launch their own classes. Enrollment for this is a different process. It's not available online. So if you want to enroll in KVA, you need to give Lori Paul a phone call up here at the district office. So her number is 501-1939, and she can send you an enrollment packet. You do have to complete the entire enrollment packet. So it is some paperwork that you'll have to do. It's not just an easy switch. And the enrollment deadline on KVA is August 28th. So if that's something you're thinking about doing, please give it some urgency. The big difference in terms of KVA and what you'd see in a schedule that was shared earlier by our principals is KVA really is dependent on parents creating that home schedule of when things are going to get done. I'm not going to undersell the fact that parents have to be that learning coach that Dr. Connolly alluded to with using Edgenuity if they're K5 or OdysseyWare if they're 6-8, 9-12 with high school. Parents have to play a role in this. KVA students meet with their teacher at a minimum once a week. If you have a kindergartner, we will be required to meet with them more than once a week, but it's a 1-week minimum meeting with your teacher to discuss progress and to set up the next week learning goals. We call them student learning plans, but to get all that in place. Because KVA is ALE, we are bound by some different laws. And so the big thing that people need to be aware of with KVA is that students have to make academic progress. And so academic progress will be defined by your teacher in the student learning plan. And if a student does not make academic progress by ALE law, we cannot keep them enrolled at KVA. And at that point, they would be returned back to their home school, which again, same platform, just a little different look to the day. So KVA is an option for all kids in our district. And if you have questions on that, again, Lori Paul is your enrollment contact, and then Cindy Cromwell is our principal there. So those are the two people you can contact, as well as myself. So the schedule is flexible, yes, but it does require more parental support and more parental guidance on setting up a schedule at home to make sure things get done. And with that, I'm going to introduce Heather Ogden, who's our Director of Special Education.
Thank you, Lacey. So for our students that have IEPs, our plan is to follow the general education plan as closely as we can. So we will stay with, Edgenuity for K-5, stay with Odysseyware for 6-12, and then the adopted materials at the high school. We will provide accommodations and modifications in both of those programs. For our students that have more significant disabilities, then we will be working with the families and building some individualized plans case by case. Our goal is to continue working on IEP goals, and we will be trying to bring in students in the future as soon as we have that opportunity to continue working on those goals. We will also continue to provide speech, OT, and PT services remotely. Now I'm going to hand it off to Don Iverson to talk about technology and Chromebooks.
Thank you. Appreciate you all logging on tonight. This is great to have all the feedback. So really appreciate you being here this evening. First off, I just want to talk a little bit about some resources that might be available to you. In addition to the slide that you have in front of you, I really encourage you to look at our Kelso website under COVID resources. There's lots of information in there that might be of benefit to you. We know that childcare is very difficult in our community right now to find. There's some links to some websites that both locally and statewide that can help you possibly find some resources in our area for that. We also know that we're going to an online platform, so internet access is going to be extremely important as we move forward. There are some families that need that support. There's some families that are living in very remote areas that don't have access to internet or wireless. We have a process and we have a system in place for you to contact us, and we'll work through every situation individually and try to find a successful model to make sure that we have an equitable model that everyone can access their instruction. So that slide on the right-hand side there's some important information as you move forward. I'd like to also talk about Chromebook distribution. Obviously, you need to have that Chromebook for your kids to move forward in their instruction. At the elementary level, we're having conferences, as it was discussed earlier by Dr. Connolly, on September 4th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Those are 45-minute conferences. They're pre-scheduled. You should have received a email about how to do that. For those of you who have been in the elementary for a few years with kids, you're probably accustomed to the process. If you're new kindergarten families might be struggling with how to do that, just contact your school and they can help you with that. Location of the conferences will be in your student's classroom. Just a couple reminders, when you're coming into the school, we do have to make sure that we're following Department of Health guidelines, which means we need to have a mask and socially distance. And whenever possible, we want to try to limit that conference to the parent or parents and the one student. We really don't want to have too many folks at one time entering our schools. So please help us with that. If you're signed up for elementary KVA, they'll be reaching out to you individually to set up a conference, but you too can come to your homeschool site listed on those days and go directly to the library and you get your Chromebook set delivered to you. So Chromebook, Chrome charger, and a little bag for the kids. So all that will be at the elementary level. As we go to middle school, their days are a little bit different. They're on September 3rd and 4th. Distribution is done by alphabet, and you can see the times that are listed there. It will be in the parking lots at the home school. It'll be kind of a rotation, so they'll come in and get their Chromebook. They'll have an opportunity to pick up their schedule, things of that nature, as well as having some additional time maybe to go to a different area to get really some helpful hints on how to log in and things of that nature. If you're a middle school KVA student, again, you're just going to join your homeschool site and you're going to get the Chromebook just like every other kiddo at that middle school would. High school follows a very similar structure on September 2nd, 3rd, and 4th by grade level and by time. It's the same format as the middle schools. They're working on some things that may change the location of this from the parking lot to maybe using some of the facility itself. That has been or will be talked to or sent out to parents here shortly. So again, we have a Chromebook distribution process in exchange. And I do want to emphasize that we really want those old Chromebooks brought back. So if you had those from last spring and we need to upgrade those, and you're going to have a different Chromebook checked out to you in the fall. If you're a Kelso High KVA student, again, you're going to go to the Kelso High list times above and get your Chromebook at that time. Next slide talks a little bit about some internet access. We know that there are some sites that are challenging to get internet. The district is working really hard to provide Comcast internet as well as possibility of AT&T hotspots that might be made available depending on your situation, where you're at, things of that nature. We're working hard to put free Wi-Fi to kids in our parking lots at Kelso High, Cowieman, currently Carroll's and Rose Valley, so anybody can access internet off our Chromebooks at that time in those locations. And we're also working hard on plans to what happens if kids are out in remote areas that don't have any access at all, what can we do? So we're developing on some plans on what we might be able to support those families in those situations. We also have a help desk that'll be available throughout the regular school time where families could email and get really assistance on the Chromebook and how things are working that way. Again, this information will all be posted on our website and available to families as we progress through the next few weeks. So thank you all. At this point, I'll turn it over to Scott Westland, who will talk a little bit about meals and transition plans.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Iverson. So I want to talk a little bit about our meal distribution that we have planned for the all remote as well as the hybrid model once we get into that model. Back in the spring of this past year, we had 15 sites located at various schools and out in the community where we were delivering up to about 2,000 meals, breakfast and lunch per day. By the end of the spring, we had served over 100,000 meals. We plan to continue that process, though we've added some additional sites. We have about 18 sites currently on our list. The ones that you see in front of you are the ones that will be distributed at the schools themselves. You'll notice that all of our elementary schools are listed there, and we'll be serving meals for students to take home, both a breakfast and a lunch given daily from 11:50 to 12:45. We will also be delivering meals at Kelso High School in the back parking lot during those same times. If you're wondering what about the middle schools, well, students can go to any school to pick up a meal. And so for those students that attend Cowieman Middle School, if you live closer to Butler Acres or you live out in the valley, you can go to Rose Valley or Carroll's, or you could come in to Kelso High School as well. You'll notice down there at the bottom that we have a location at Kelso High School for once a week for those families that have a difficult time getting into the pickup locations during lunchtime from 4:45 to 5:45 in the evenings, where we will provide a box of meals, 1 week's worth of meals and milk for families to take home for that week. And so we're providing a couple of options there as well. In regards to the next slide, which is our meal delivery locations, we have 10 drop sites that will be located throughout the community. 4 of them in the Lexington area, and 3 of them on the northwest route, which would be the district office and Columbia Heights Assembly Church, as well as the country-run apartments between closer to Beacon Hill and Lexington. We'll be offering a couple of other sites on the northeast side, Pleasant Hill and North Pacific Pullout, Rollingwood and Swiftwater, and Mount Brinion and Hageman Road. And then we have some south stops, particularly around those areas for Wallace Elementary School, as well as Carroll Road and South Kelso Drive. You'll notice the pickup times are a little bit different than the ones that are at our schools. We've got about a 10-minute window for each one of those sites. That seemed to work really well in the spring, so we're going with that same model. Please keep in mind that the arrival times could be plus or minus 5 minutes or so from those times, but we have some great staff that are pretty dedicated to getting to those spots and handing out meals. So again, we look forward to delivering lots of meals throughout our community this upcoming fall. On the next slide, it just talks a little bit about the meal bags, and again, they'll contain both a breakfast and a lunch. There could be some meals where you'll receive an item that can be reheated at home, like in a microwave or such. And so we'll try to mix up the types of meals that we're providing students throughout the time. One thing that's different this year than what was from last spring is the U.S. Department of Agriculture did not extend the waiver to allow all students to receive free meals. And so we are back at being required to charge the normal approved rate. So if you're on a free or reduced, you'll obviously have a free meal, or the reduced is at a much lower cost. But if you're at a paid status, you'll be charged the normal meal rate for that meal that you pick up. Again, as I mentioned, students can go to any school stop to collect a bag of meal. One thing that's not listed on here, which I should mention and add, and we will add this, is that parents can also come down and pick up the meals on behalf of their students. And so that's something that some families will likely want to take advantage of. So again, if you have more information or need more information about our food service, you can look on our website, or we have our nutrition services office phone number there for you to reach out to us. And so I know we're in the process right now of collecting free and reduced applications, and I would encourage any family to complete one of those. And if maybe your family status has changed or your income level has changed since last year, we would highly encourage you to get that paperwork submitted as quickly as you possibly can. This time I want to talk a little bit about the transition back to in-person. And this is probably an important topic, as most people want to know, when are we going to return back to school, either in a hybrid or a full model. I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the ways in which that decision will be made. So bottom line is, all the school districts in our county have been working with our Department of Health and working together, and all of our decisions are based largely on the recommendations from our Department of Health, and those are the guidelines that we use and the metrics that we use to make those decisions. We are, of course, prepared to bring students back, and when we do so, such things as social distancing, daily health checks, which will be asked of parents to conduct of their children. So please don't send a sick child to school. We would rather have them stay home rather than bring any illness to school, and as well as increase in types of cleaning protocols will be put into place to ensure that we're taking care of the health and welfare of our staff and our students together. Meals, transportation, logistics will all be in place for that. Our meals will continue regardless if we're back in the hybrid model. Once we come back to a hybrid model, we will continue to offer meals not only at school, but also out in the community Obviously, if a student is attending one of their normal school days, they will eat their meal at the school itself. So again, we do have some social things in place, social distancing and health and safety requirements in place, requirements to wear a mask, encouraging students and staff to stay 6 feet apart as much as possible. Our classrooms will be set up to accommodate that 6 feet separation. Again, staying home if you're sick, and we will provide plenty of opportunities for students to wash their hands and use sanitizer to keep themselves clean and safe. In regards to one other item that I wanted to talk about with personal protective equipment, we do have plenty of supplies and materials available. We will be issuing at least 2 cloth face masks to each student. They've been customized for their school and for the school district. So hopefully that will encourage those students to wear masks while they're here at school. We also have face shields for those students that may prefer to wear a face shield. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got lots of cleaning supplies and sanitizer to keep everybody safe. The last part of the presentation this evening, before we get into a few questions and answers, deals with our decision-making tree that we are using for the return to school in person. And there's a lot of information on this particular handout that's in front of you, and I hope to take the next couple of slides and actually break it down. But as you can see here, if you're interested in reading through it, there's really 3 components to trying to make a determination about returning to school. The first one is looking at the metrics of how many cases of COVID-19 are there per 100,000 residents in Cowlitz County over the last 14 days. And I'll get into those 3. There's three levels. There's high, moderate, and low. And we'll go through the definition of each one of those and what that provides us the opportunity to do in our school. The other components that relates to the metrics is whether or not the school can implement recommended health and safety measures. And there's a big checklist that's listed there in the middle. And yes, we do have the ability to meet those health and safety measure requirements. The last one is whether or not the school and the health system in general, our Cowlitz County health system, is able to respond to suspected and confirmed cases of COVID. And so that'll also be a part of that determination of whether or not we have the capabilities. We do have those capabilities in the school, and we'll be looking to Cowlitz County Department of Health to aid us in that process as well. So if all the stars align, if you will, and everything lines up, then we will be able to transition into some sort of a hybrid model. The next slide that we have here breaks down the 3 different metric levels, and I wanted to go over each one of those. And then the last slide, I want to show you actually where we're at and where we've been and where we hope we're headed down this road. So the high level, which is over 75 cases per 100,000 in the last 14 days, requires us to stay in distance learning, with very limited in-person learning opportunities that might be available. Sports, extracurricular activities would not be allowed during that time. The intermediate range is the moderate level, and that is 25 to 75 cases per 100,000 in the last 14 days. That does allow us to start to gradually expand into in-person education. The recommendation is to start with our elementary students before we move on to our older students. And I think that largely has to do with the recommendation that it's our younger students that need more in-class support from their teachers. The last level is the low activity level, and that's cases less than 25 per 100,000 in the last 14 days. The recommendation in that case is to bring back elementary students full-time and then transition over time to our middle and high school students to eventually return to full-time as well. A couple of things to note is once we get into measuring these metrics and evaluating where we're at on that chart. It takes about 3 weeks for cases to settle down, stabilize, before making really big decisions about returning to school. So they want to see a real stable level of cases within our county before they'll release a recommendation to return to school. These recommendations to return to school are actually provided by our task force, which is comprised of our teachers and administrators and principals, community members, school board members that serve on a task force to evaluate the different levels of activity and what type of a program they would recommend to our school board to implement. And so we'll be meeting over the next couple of weeks as a task force once a week to sort of analyze what our metrics are, where they're headed, and to make some decisions and recommendations to our school board. The last slide describes or shows to you kind of where we've been over the last 5 to 6 months and kind of where we are currently. You'll notice on this chart that we were in the green area, which would be the low level of activity, for much of the spring. Now, there's some debate about whether or not there was enough testing capability to go on as to whether or not those numbers are accurate. But you'll notice in the middle of the chart, those dates there right around Memorial Day weekend, that's when our rates substantially began to increase. In fact, the month of July, they peaked towards the end of July at the very high level where we were looking at close to 150 cases per 100,000. As you can tell, they began to subside some through July and the first parts of August. We're currently in the moderate zone, which is a good positive sign for our community. In fact, you'll probably notice down if you look at that chart there that we're starting to get closer to the green, the low level of activity. What's important, I think, for our community to understand at this point in time is there's a lot of concern about Labor Day weekend and what impact that's going to have on our rates within Cowlitz County. I can only urge our community to remain vigilant at remaining safe, keeping social distance, wearing face masks, because we do want to return to school. And if the level continues to drop over the next couple of weeks, our return to school will be much brighter should those rates remain stable, if not decrease, continue to decrease. But we're really counting on our community for that support so that we can get our kids back into our schools. And I can only thank the community enough over the last month and a half for bringing these rates down. And so all we can say is positive signs ahead. We hope that things will continue, but we do need a few weeks to be able to make sure that our rates are going to stabilize over the next short period of time before we can make decisions to bring students back. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to our moderator, Ms. Budge, who will see about if we can answer some questions.
While they're working on that, I can answer one question that I see from toward the very beginning. It says, will the daily Zoom meetings for regular classes be recorded and available to parents for KVA student resources at the elementary school level? The KVA Students wouldn't need those daily classes recorded that are being taught in the 2.0 because through Edgenuity, all of their resources would be right in that program. And so as they're working through, if they don't understand something or need something clarified, they can click the help button and it will have a little 30-second to 2 minutes, sometimes up to 5 minutes, but they're pretty short video that would help explain to them how to solve those problems and to work through their struggles in that area. They also have an access to their teacher, so they could email their teacher for support or provide some extra support in that way also. I think those two things would help the KVA student to be able to work through their struggles if they have some.
Thank you, Kim. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. So as the co-host, we needed to adjust our mute function. So I was sharing with the rest of the group that as I was collecting the questions, I developed themes and organized those questions. Several themes emerged, and so I would call those high interest topics for this evening anyway. We have lots of individual questions that we just won't have time to get to tonight. So I just want to reiterate that we have a little bit of time now to answer, again, those thematic questions that arose where multiple people needed similar information. The other questions will be answered in an FAQ. We'll be posting that document on our website along with the recording of the webinar and some other reopening resources. So the first high interest topic of the evening, again, multiple questions asked around the same theme, is going to Lacey. It's around the idea of transitioning to or from KVA in the 2.0 model. In other words, can kids get out of KVA if it's not working, or if they choose to come back to continuous learning, or vice versa? So if you could expound on that, that'd be helpful.
You betcha. So the expectation is that if a student enrolls in KVA or a student wants to transition to KVA, that we hold as close as possible to grading periods. So that'd be quarters, that would be trimesters, it would be at a clean place where grades could get transferred over. That would be the expectation and the hope. Hopefully by spring, we're not in this situation, we're back in person in some capacity. But if we were looking forward to the spring, spring break would be the cutoff overall before for a kid to be able to transfer into KVA or out of it. So it depends on what level your student is. So if you were an elementary or a high school student, we're looking at the trimester. If you're middle school, we would probably take an evaluation at about a quarter. Semester would be ideal, but that's a long time out for a middle school student. And I think that's all I have for that.
Okay, thank you. The other high interest topic, again, for this evening's chat is for Dawn. Dawn, it's around Chromebook checkout. Are there any provisions in place for families that are unable to come at their scheduled checkout time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've worked with principals, and we're hoping that if families have a challenge to get to those times that they call their school offices, and we'll make some arrangements to make sure that every student has access to their Chromebook. We realize that most of all of the Chromebook times right now are designated during the school day. We understand that, but we do want to make special accommodations if needed. So just contact your school office and they'll be glad to work with you.
Mr. Iverson, I just need to jump in real quick. We do not have access right now at Kelso High for parents to call in. We can't obtain the messages. So if they could please email Mrs. Busby, you can find her email address on our website, shanna.busby@kelsosd.org. Then we will make sure we set something up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iverson. Kim, back to you. Another high interest topic again for tonight's chat box was around Chromebooks, but instead of the logistics of pickup, can folks use their own devices, their own home devices, if they have their own Chromebook or laptop or other mobile devices? Will it work with the platforms?
Yes, it will. Any device that can get into Google Classroom, so any device that has a Chrome base or can get onto Google Chrome, will be able to get into Google Classroom, and you'll have access to everything through that. They could actually do it through a phone if they're in a pinch, or their computer, or an iPad. There's a lot of devices that'll work for it.
Okay, thank you. Another thematic question that arose is actually for Dawn and Heather. Can you expound more on students with 504s, ELL students, and a little more finite detail on plans for special education students? Heather and Dawn, please.
So for the students with IEPs, we will be really working with the families and building some individual plans. So case managers are going to be contacting parents and kind of working through some of those plans so that we can meet the goals on the IEP.
Now, I would just add that through 504 plans, those are classroom-based, usually modifications and things of that nature. So we really would anticipate those going into play when kids return. If there's an outlier in there within the 504 plan that would impact online learning, then we need to obviously notify the case manager, which is usually the counselor at each school, to identify what we can do to help support that child. In terms of ELL students, you bet we're serving ELL students. Just as we would any student moving forward, and there'll be some additional information from the ELL teachers going out to those kids who do qualify for that program in the coming days.
Thank you. Another question that has come up regarding all levels, so it may involve an answer from Director Yor, and then certainly Christine at the high school level, Laura at the middle school level, and Mark at the elementary. And the questions coming in are around obtaining student schedules, and at the secondary level, any potential schedule changes or conflicts, and sort of working through that process. Kim, Christine, Laura, Mark?
I'll go ahead.
I was reading some of those questions, and I you know, at elementary level, every student could have a different schedule, because if you look at the sample schedule that we sent out, that was for a general ed student, and then there's some group times in there. It doesn't mean that the student will go to all 4 groups that are listed. There's a group A, group B, group C, group D. So what it means is that a student would log in the morning for their cell whole class instruction, and then their teacher will give them a schedule when we are doing conferences for elementary. So when they come to the conference, they'll get their own child's schedule. And within that schedule, they'll have the cell group that they'll do with everyone in their class, and then they'll have a 30-minute small group instruction with their teacher. If they're special education, they will have additional special education minutes with their special education teacher or paraprofessional that's supported by their special education teacher. If they're ELL, they'll have maybe a half hour in their schedule for ELL services by the ELL coordinators. If they're a title lap, they'll have additional time in there to get that title lap support by the title lap teachers. And so every elementary student schedule is going to look very different, and they will, you'll get to see that at conference time and then go over that with the teacher so that the parents and students are all really clear on what that will look like. For middle school, I'll let Laura, if you want to talk about middle school, but the middle school and high school schedules, you saw them today. They're going to stick pretty close to that. It just depends, like if their classes change, maybe their first period becomes 5th period because they've dropped band or something like that, then they still log in during that first period time. It would just be with their new teacher that they have if their classes have changed. Then we might talk a little bit, I noticed some questions for middle school and high school about the support time, because there's a 60-minute, you can see kind of core instruction time. And then there's also a 30-minute support time for high school and middle school.
So Holly, can I join in and talk about the schedules? I believe the question was regarding actually receiving their course schedule for the high school at least. And those went live August 18th, along with a skyward email to families. We've had tons of kids calling in and emailing their counselors to change their schedules. That can happen up through Friday, the 28th. So they have 2 more days to change their schedules, and then their schedules will lock in place unless there's a class that's missing from their schedule, or if they have a duplicate class that they've taken in the past and for whatever reason it shows up again on their schedule. Students will receive a hard copy of that schedule when they come to pick up their Chromebook during that Chromebook scheduled Chromebook pickup time. So we, as Dawn mentioned, Mr. Iverson mentioned, we are working on a way to get our students in small groups to collect their resources, and their schedule is the first part of that. So here at the high school, they'll get their hard copy schedule, but they have been live on Skyward since the 18th of August.
And at the middle school level, it's very similar. Our schedules are not live yet, as we're still adjusting them because of unenrollment to KVA and other things like that, but they will be next week. They'll be live hopefully towards the beginning of next week. Our goal is to have them fully live so that we can print schedules and give those to you at the Chromebook distribution days on September 3rd and September 4th. You'll get a printed schedule at that time.
Excellent, thank you. We have time for just a couple more thematic questions, and then again, the rest of the individual questions we'll be assembling answers to those and getting those posted on our website for all of you. Let me get to my themes here. Scott, for you, can you expound a little bit more on the meal service in terms of cost for folks? Go over one more time the locations and any process or paperwork that maybe people need to do.
Well, I can, without having the presentation in front of me, I can address at least where the meals are located. So again, all of our elementary schools will have meals service provided at the elementary schools, as well as Kelso High School from 11:50 to 12:40, 12:45 in the afternoon. One day a week at Kelso High School in the late afternoon, early evening. Parents and families can go to Kelso High School and receive 1 week's worth of meals at that time. In regards to the amount of charges for our meals, we are required this year to, for those students that normally would pay, they will be charged for their meals. For those that are on free status, those meals would be free, and those that are on reduced status would pay the reduced rate. And so normal charges will go back into effect starting this fall, and that's due to the fact that the U.S. Department of Agriculture did not provide us a waiver like they did back in the spring. In addition to those sites that I mentioned, there's also 10 other sites around the community that were shown in our PowerPoint this evening, and the times are listed for that. And again, all of our meals will provide 1 breakfast and 1 lunch given daily at all of our sites.
Thank you, Scott. Last question, and then I'll turn it over to Superintendent Tack. Dawn, can you share any information about attendance? We have some questions around truancy, attendance, and excusals. You know, maybe there's a Wi-Fi issue or a parent schedule conflict in terms of helping the student be present.
Sure. We just received some state guidance on attendance just recently, and we're still kind of working through that. It's just really important that your kids are making progress on whatever platform that they're using. Although we want them to log in daily, and that's really important to do on the 2.0 version, it's really about progress and being in communication with your student's teacher. So if there's access issues, there's some issues that are happening, just making sure that you contact the school like you normally would is really important for us to know and be able to progress and move forward with your child. So no difference, call in and let people know that and how they can help.
Thank you so much. With that, I'll turn it back over to Superintendent Tack. I think she has a closing message, and look for more information on our website. Thank you very much for the questions. Appreciate it.
Again, I just want to thank you so much for being here tonight. It's a great turnout. And thank you for your grace and patience, really for about the last 160 days. We desperately miss the students and the student staff relationship is really important. It's near and dear to our hearts, and we're working hard to get back to in-person and still have the option of KVA for remote if that meets the needs of families. Kelso's a special place. As you can see, I just want to thank the 9 panelists for presenting tonight, and our staff that is preparing and excited to get back in the work and work with our students of Kelso. Again, just during this transition time, we have a great plan. We always appreciate questions and feedback, and we're very open to that. So please send that to marybeth.tack@kelsosd.org, and I'll help direct and answer as best I can to the questions that you might have. But again, thank you so much, and thanks for our 9 panelists that are here tonight presenting to you. Have a great evening. This will be posted on our website. We've recorded this same session, so if you want to share that, you can go online on our website, kelso.wednet.edu, and this will be posted on the PowerPoint as well as this recorded session. So thanks again, everyone.